So this right here is the new saddlebag from Ortlieb. And I know what you're thinking, this looks like your typical bike packing saddlebag. What could they have possibly done to improve it? Well, I think this is where things get really interesting. One of the unique things about Ortlieb is they have the ability to create their own hardware. And that's what they've done to iterate on the saddlebag. So you can see here, they've got a whole kind of cool quick release system. One cool thing about this bag is that it's specifically dropper post compatible. So I pulled out one of the few bikes I have a dropper on, and that's what we're gonna attach it on. It's got this little mounting block that goes on the dropper post. And depending on the size post you have, you've got some shims to take up the slack. So let's get it on, see how easy or difficult it is to install. So yes, I know this bike has a rack on it as well. I don't feel like removing the rack right now, so let's just get on with it. We've got our block, we've got some shims. Instructions say to mount it this direction with this kind of larger flange side facing downwards. Ow. Fuck. Shims slide under. Pretty good. Just gotta line it up. Okay, next are these two bolts to kind of pinch that down. I'm not gonna take it all the way home just yet in case this does have to move up and down a bit. But already you can see it's gonna act as like kind of a natural stop to your dropper post. Moving on to the bag itself, this looks like it adjusts on these rails. So I'm gonna loosen these up semi-tight just so there's a little bit of movement so I can position the bag. Okay, so this will let me slide this back and forth. Okay, so the way that this hardware works is once you have it set up in the rails, flipping these down should lock them on top of the rails. Okay, oh nice. Seems like a pretty secure connection. Okay, I can see what's happening now. Now you can see this acts as like a hard stop, and you can really fine-tune the angle of the bag at this point. You know, if I were actually to ride with this, I'd want this a little bit more vertically oriented, not so horizontal in case I hit a bump and it's not gonna be slapping the tire. Okay. Lower it just a bit to, let's say, about here. That does take away some dropper, but it points the bag nice and upwards. Looks pretty good. Again, it's all a give and take of how much travel you want as opposed to the angle of the bag. I'm going to set the block here just so I actually have some travel and the dropper post isn't completely useless. So working within that, I mean, that seems reasonable. It's fairly horizontal, maybe about there. That would be good. Okay, so very carefully, I'm going to undo the bag. Remember my measurement here. I've snugged down the bolts here to kind of secure it into position, as well as the block over here. To attach it, you want it in this kind of wings up position. Find your happy spot, put that down, and then lock it into place with these straps here. And then you've got just one other Velcro strap to work with. I guess keeps it from the off chance of flying off the block. And then you have these additional straps here to really cinch down the bag. You know, bring it up. There is this harder thin plastic here that really gives it some more support and shape. You know, one of the problems with this style bag is that it tends to droop, but this is surprisingly rigid here. I can see that as you pack beyond this point, there might be some droopage, but here where it's closest to the tire seems pretty well supported. So I'm gonna bounce the bike up and down and let's see what that looks like. It's pretty good. Doesn't look like, you know, it's gonna depend on your load and the angle, but at the moment it doesn't look like it's slapping the tire too much. This would be a pretty big drop for me. Again, if I didn't like that, I could lower the block, angle this more upwards to get better clearance, but I did want some usable travel on the dropper. I guess, speaking of which, let's actuate the dropper here. Cool. So it acts as a stop, preventing this from hitting the tire in the drop position. Might get a little slappy in the low position, but that's something to be expected. But pretty cool. Okay, so that was pretty good. I think I'm gonna readjust it. Let's say that this is a non-dropper seat post for a second, and your main priority was to get the bag as far away from the tire as much as possible. What would that look like? So as a general rule, the higher this moves up, the more upward pointed the bag will be, and the lower, the more horizontal. Likewise on the block, the lower down the post, the more upward, the higher up the post, the more horizontal. Okay, so that was pretty easy to get on. Let's lock down the arms. Put the Velcro and put this guy on. There we go. So in this position, definitely less likely to slap the tire, although you do lose travel. So this is probably how you would set it up if you were running a bike without a dropper, had a small frame, and was kind of paranoid about tire slap. So to get it off, it's pretty easy. Undo this Velcro, loosen these straps, put this in a wings up position, and there you go. If you've ever used a seat bag, then you know that getting the straps over the rails to the bag itself is probably the most fiddly bit. I know in Ortlieb's older seat bag, without the hardware, they used narrower straps, which definitely helped. This gets rid of that problem completely. So less finger gymnastics, although you do still have to take a little bit of care to get it on the rails properly. So I think this is a pretty clever solution from Ortlieb, and it really plays to their strengths because they do have the ability to create their own custom hardware, as opposed to, say, other bag makers that can only focus on the bag and use webbing straps that are available. This is more of a first look than a review. I mean, I just installed it today, obviously. It will be interesting to see if it's rattly. That's one thing I'm curious about. I believe the bag has a 3 kilogram weight limit, so a little bit on the lighter side, but then again, you probably wouldn't want to put more on a bag like this anyways. I know that there's gonna be some purists that will poo-poo the idea of hardware on a bike packing bag because it was initially the move away from hardware that made these bikes so appealing. You just relied on webbing that was pretty strong and easily replaceable. This clamp does introduce some complexity, but I do think it takes away the frustration of having to needle through those straps. Let's say you get to camp and it's pouring outside, you want to bring your whole bag inside with you, then it's a pretty easy maneuver of undoing that main Velcro strap and then doing that, and then it's off. It also seems to be pretty easy to put the bag on. I know with some configurations, I have to empty the bag completely to get it on the bike well. But with this, it seems to go on without too much of a fuss. So again, even from this awkward angle, pretty cool. I think I'm gonna take this out for a couple rides and come back at you guys, let you know if it's vibrating, if it's broken, generally what I think about it after using it for a bit. But let me know what you guys think about it in the comments below. Is this too complex? Is this a welcome move? Let me know in the comments, and if you appreciate videos like this, definitely consider supporting the channel by joining us on Patreon, buying a sticker, patch, all that good stuff. And as always, keep the supple side down.